Hello, my love, and welcome back to the Energy Expansion Podcast. Today, we're going to be diving into a very real and raw conversation about something that we all face, we all experience on our path of growth, healing, and expansion. What we're going to be talking about today is resistance. Resistance, which is really just another word for fear, but we're going to take this conversation really deep and we're going to look at this from several different angles. And my deepest desire and intention is that as a result of listening to this podcast episode, the way that you relate to fear and resistance will be completely transformed from this day forward. It's still going to be there, but it's not going to have the same kind of power that maybe it's had on you recently or in the past. This is not just a mindset pep talk. We're going to be going really deep with this into the inner work. This conversation is all about momentum, energy, growth, and healing in a way that's really truly aligned and embodied. So whether you're navigating resistance in your business, inside of motherhood, maybe your health journey when it comes to your creativity, or you're just trying to get out of your own damn way, then you, my love, are in store for such a treat. This episode is specifically for you. And here's the truth. I feel like resistance is that annoying friend who only shows up when you're about to experience a glow up. And today, we are having you claim that glow up, that next level, whatever that might be for you. I'm so incredibly excited to talk about this because I really want to normalize resistance, reframe what it actually means, how fear shows up inside of our lives, both personally and professionally. And I also want to give you some tangible tools to move through it with power, grace, and confidence. This is something that every single human on the planet experiences, myself included. This is a conversation that I have with so many of my clients, and this has probably been one of the most common topics that have come up inside of the hundreds, honestly, probably thousands of coaching sessions I've led over the last decade plus of doing this work. And here's what I want you to know more than anything. Fear and resistance are really powerful teachers. They absolutely serve a purpose, especially when we learn how to work with them and not against them. So with that said, let's dive into this. So what is resistance really? Resistance is a psychological and physiological. So psychological is it's happening in our mind. Physiological is it's happening in our body. And it is a response to a perceived threat or change. So it can absolutely occur when there's a real threat. And this is part of our really primitive brain. So this is a part of us that has lived with us and inside of us since we were cavemen. And we are not cavemen anymore. We are not cavemen and women, right? And it's so interesting because the place inside of us where fear and resistance live has not actually evolved, even though we have. As a society and as a human species. So really what this is it's your brain's way of trying to keep you safe, even when there's not an actual life or death threat. The first time I learned this, it was so mind-blowing. I was at an event and there was a speaker on stage talking about this, and she used the example of how our brain literally cannot decipher this part of our brain that we're talking about, where fear and resistance lives, cannot decipher the difference between being chased by a saber-toothed tiger and being stuck in traffic, running late for an important meeting. Our brain and what's happening in our brain and what's happening in our body responds exactly the same in those two very different circumstances. One is life or death, and the other one is relatively stressful. Huge difference there, right? So neuroscience, which is understanding the brain, tells us that our brain is wired to favor and lean toward what's familiar, even if that is not working. Isn't that crazy? That's what happens when our brain's fear center is lighting up and telling us that something is dangerous when it's not. So, what is resistance in reality? It's honestly a compass. It's a good thing. It can be really helpful. And what I've found with the incredible heart-centered women, leaders, healers, entrepreneurs, mothers that I've had the opportunity of working with, and I'll throw myself into that category as well, all of those categories, is that when resistance creeps up, the stronger it feels, the more important it is to look at. So one of my favorite neuroscientists, his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you're not familiar with his work, oh my goodness, open up wherever you listen to podcasts or open up YouTube and search Dr. Joe Dispenza and just watch a few of his videos. He also has some really incredible books, a whole massive body of work. I own a few of his books, and admittedly, I've not been able to read any of them cover to cover. They're very science-y. It's like reading a textbook, but I do love listening to him in interviews. I love his workshops. He's absolutely brilliant. And he says that your body becomes addicted to the familiar emotions of the past, even the ones that don't serve you. And so we often recreate more of what we actually don't want. And this is one of the reasons why true change and transformation can feel so difficult, can feel wildly uncomfortable, and sometimes even impossible. So I want to give you a little reframe as we continue down this conversation and move from point to point. But what I've really loved to take on for myself and what I share with my clients is that when resistance comes up, it doesn't necessarily mean to stop or to turn around and run away. It often means that we are on to something really big. And not only should we not run away in most cases, but that's an opportunity to lean in, to continue stepping forward. There are a few books that I talk about often that I will encourage my clients to read or share with loved ones when certain things come up. And one book that I feel like I talk about more than any, there's like two or three. And for the sake of this conversation, the book that I'm literally staring at it's right in front of me. That's how often I reference it, that it's like in my line of vision. It's called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, which the title sounds a little scary and dramatic, but it's literally an entire book about fear and resistance and how to move through it. And it's powerful. There's moments that are really serious, and it's also really funny. There's so many moments where you'll read it and you'll laugh at yourself. So that's where I've really learned to look at the way that resistance pops up and how it's actually an indicator that you're moving in the exact right direction. So let's talk about all of the different ways. I mean, not all, because we would probably be here for hours, maybe even days, if we talked about all of the ways that fear and resistance show up. But I want to talk about the most common one, the ones that I experience on almost a daily basis inside of my personal and professional life, but also what I see come up with my clients most often. So the first one, you ready for it? You can go ahead and shout me or raise your hand if you can relate to any or all of these. So the first one is procrastination. Procrastination, hello, social media, mindless scrolling. doing things that we don't actually need to do, stepping away from the important work to do the dishes or fold the laundry or clean the thing that doesn't need our immediate attention. This is all of those creative delay tactics. And often what happens is we can convince ourselves that it's cool. Like, we're busy, we're doing things, right? But being busy for the sake of being busy isn't actually helpful. We want to make sure that we're investing our time and our energy in the spaces and places and tasks that are actually going to move the needle forward. And procrastination is a sneaky way for us to do the opposite of that. The other one that comes up, and I know this one so well, is perfectionism, is continually putting off the thing because it needs to be a little bit better, or you need to tweak it here, or you want to come back to it again and again. And if you're anything like me, you know logically that there's no such thing as perfect. But the voice of perfectionism is going to try so hard to get it as close to perfect as possible. And often that's never actually going to happen. One of my favorite mantras is done is better than perfect. And speaking of done, easier said than done to really take on that mantra. Done is better than perfect, because I will tell myself that, and I have a really hard time believing it sometimes, but I know that I've just got to tap into that, complete the thing, hit submit, hit send, hit publish, whatever it is, wrap up that task, and then move on to the next thing. The next one is going to be overwhelm and or shutting down. So this is another way that we can respond to fear. So this is that voice inside that says, oh, whoa, this is way too much. Maybe later. I don't even know where to begin. Oh my goodness. I don't know is one of the sneakiest, one of the sneakiest ways that resistance shows up. This used to be a pattern that I would run often. I would have coaches and healers and mentors that I was investing quite heavily in, trying to help me with something, and they would ask me a question, and before they would even finish saying what they were going to say, like before the words were done coming out of their mouth, I would already in my mind think, well, I don't know, and then I would blurt that out. And I had she's a very good friend of mine now, and she's an energy healer, and at one point she said, Dani, do you realize this pattern that you are stuck in, a pattern that is called I don't know? And I kind of looked at her like I just tilted my head like I'm a curious little puppy. My dogs do that. Like, what do you mean? I was not aware of this at all. And she goes, yeah, there's this sort of subconscious block, and I'm not able to take you any further because you immediately stop yourself with the conclusion, the assumption, the words, the phrase, I don't know. So she gave me a little workaround here, and it's amazing. I use this all the time. I share it with my clients, and they use it all the time. So if I don't know is a pattern that you're stuck in, if I don't know is something that you notice you're thinking or speaking aloud verbally more than you'd like to, honestly, anytime it comes up, something that you can say is, okay, maybe I feel like I don't know, but if I did know, what would it be? If I did know, what would the answer be? If I did know, what would the next right step look like? Or what action would I take next? So you're kind of entertaining, you're letting I don't know be there. You're not completely swatting it away, bearing it down, or denying the experience of it. But you're just saying, okay, I don't know. Let's move over just for a moment and let's play pretend. Let's play in the land of, maybe I actually do know. And oh my goodness, that opens up worlds of possibility. Resistance can also show up as anxiety, avoidance, Ooh, I know avoidance very well. There are moments when I describe it as burying my head in the sand, right? If if I don't look at it, then it's not there. If I don't see it, then it doesn't exist and then I don't have to deal with it, right? It can also show up as energy dips, like really extreme energetic highs and lows. It can also manifest as physical symptoms. Yes, my friends, the word disease literally translates to dis-ease. It's when something inside of us is trying to communicate something and we're not listening. There's a lesson, there's a message, there's wisdom. And so what will often happen is it will manifest as physical pain to try to get our attention. We are so freaking powerful. There's a few resources that I'll tag inside of the show notes, resources that I've been using for years, where if a client comes to me and they're experiencing some sort of physical pain, tension, ailment, sickness, I am not a doctor by any means. I don't have any like official medical background, but the energetic and emotional impact of what's happening inside of us and how it manifests through our physical body. Oh my goodness, my friends, it is so real. I know from firsthand experience, but I have a few different resources that I'll use with clients. One of my favorite ones, it's a little newer. I've maybe been using it for 6 months. It's called The Secret Language of the Body. Ooh, so good. And Louise Hay has a classic one called Heal Your Body. So I love all of this so much that we're uncovering this. I'm hoping that there are already like aha moments and breakthroughs for you. And I want you to know that, and I've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I am personally not exempt from the experience of fear and resistance. I definitely get my fair share of everything we're talking about. If I'm being completely honest, resistance shows up every day, multiple times a day. It shows up in my business. It shows up when I feel like my intuition or spirit gives me a new idea to implement. It shows up when I'm feeling called to implement the same thing that I've done again and again and again. So it comes up with new ideas. It comes up when I want to act on tried and true creative endeavors, launches, offers. It's so interesting how it comes up. It comes up almost every single time I go to record a podcast episode. It's so interesting. It really came up loud and clear when it came to actually launching the podcast. Do you all remember that? If you don't know the story, I have got to tell you that it was the end of 2023. It was probably actually like the fall of 2023. And that entire year, I had so many people in my community, clients and people who enjoy following me and receiving my content on free platforms like different social media places where I show up, and even mentors of mine who were like, hey, I really feel like a podcast would be a great way for you to teach and share value, show up for your people. And also, hey, Dani, you love spoken word. You love speaking, which all of that is true. You should probably start a podcast. And I remember being like, I don't think I actually want that. I don't think that's actually for me. And because it was a lot of like, you should do that, I feel like I have an allergic reaction when it comes to the word should. Why? Because I think I spent a whole lot of my life, the majority of my life, shoulding all over myself, right? Dani, you should do this and you should do that. My own shoulds, but then also when other people told me I should do something, I took it on as divine truth with a capital T, and often it led me astray. I am not a fan of doing what you think you should do. The conversations that I have with the people in my world, when I hear should, I stop them dead in their tracks in a really loving way. And I say, okay, we've got to look at this. There's a difference between what you think you should do or what other people are telling you you should do and what's actually right and true and correct and aligned for you. Sometimes there's an intersection between those two things, but sometimes they're also very, very different. And so because of that, that was one of the reasons I was resistant to starting this podcast. I was also resistant because I thought, well, I've never done this before, right? Like, what do I know about this? Would anybody even listen? Is it going to be any good? Is it going to make a difference? It's probably going to be way too much work. I'm not tech savvy. I'm not going to be able to figure out how to do that. Friends, this was just like, I just rattled off so many different things. And this was just a sliver of what was happening in my head and in my heart and in my body when it came to doing the podcast. What's so funny is I thought, maybe I'll give it a go. So I literally recorded a year worth of podcast episodes. What do I mean by that? Once a month with my clients, I would do these live studio audience recordings, which I'm still doing, and they're very fun. Today, it's just solo. There's nobody else here today with me. We're going to be doing another one next week for the Women Inside of Energy Expansion Academy. Little plug. If you want to be part of the Energy Expansion live studio audience, let me know, and we can totally chat about EEA, which is Energy Expansion Academy. And so I was recording podcast episodes literally for an entire year and wasn't even sure if I was going to do the podcast. I don't think I ever told anybody that. Like my clients, I just wanted to provide value for them. And I knew that they were going to get value from the episodes that I was recording, whether or not I ever ended up doing anything with them. And then I was having a conversation on December 31st with one of my very own mentors, the one who had really encouraged me. She was like, Dani, I see this for you. She's very strategic and rooted in logic and analytics, but she's also super intuitive, like really intuitive. And we've known each other for a really long time. She knows me really well, and I know her really well. She's hired me to coach her on things, and I've hired her to coach me on things. And so there was that level of trust there, but we had just a regular session on December 31st, and she was like, you're going to publish it right now. And I was like, excuse me, what? And we did it, and it happened. And I've probably shared this here before, but I want to sing it, shout it from the rooftops. This has been one of my highlights of 2025. So something that was a seed that was planted almost 2 years ago, probably more than 2 years ago, I had a ton of resistance around, and I'm so glad that I didn't let that fear and resistance stop me, because it has really just been one of the biggest blessings. One of the things that has had me feel more lit up and more alive inside of my business than I have felt in a really long time. So resistance is something that I get to navigate on a regular basis. I'm not afraid of it. I don't make it bad. I don't make it wrong. I use a few different tools that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. One of the things that I think I've already touched on was when resistance comes up, it's not necessarily a sign or an indicator that you need to stop, like halt, turn around, run away. In fact, it's often an indicator of like, there's something we should pay attention to here. Inside of the DKC world with my clients, we use this term called nervous sighted. You can probably figure out what that is, but it's a blend between the words nervous and excited. This is probably about to blow your damn mind if you didn't know this. And if you did, it's going to be a really great reminder. So the way that our brain, like our psychological response to fear and to excitement, is almost identical. There are no two emotional and psychological experiences that are more similar than that of fear and excitement. And so there is actually a really cool sort of like energetic alchemization tool that a lot of top performers, like the world's best athletes and people who are getting on stages, they'll use when they start to experience fear as they're getting ready to do something really big and important. They'll really lean into the energy of excitement. They'll remind themselves of this fact that it feels like I'm feeling fear and resistance, but this is actually excitement. This is this expansion. It's this like pinging energy, knowing that like, yes, there's a part of this that feels scary. It feels big. It feels new. maybe I'm not a big sports fan, but I'm thinking of like a football player getting to do the Super Bowl, right? Maybe that football player has played hundreds upon hundreds of games. Maybe they've even participated in the Super Bowl before, but there's something big about that energy. Whether you're doing it for the first time or you're doing it for the 10th time, there's a bigness, there's a greatness, there's an expansion, there's an aliveness. And so in those moments of realizing, okay, what I think is fear and resistance is actually my mind and my body responding to the excitement, the bigness, the greatness, the thing that's waiting for me on the other side of this, which is inevitably going to be amazing. So this is why resistance gets really loud right before the breakthrough. I often talk about symptoms or indicators of expansion, right? How you know you're on the cusp, on the precipice of something really big. There's a few things, and at the very top of that list is resistance and fear. So why does this happen? It happens because in these moments where resistance gets really loud, it's because you're crossing a line. You're crossing an energetic threshold from who you've been, who you've known yourself to be, maybe for your entire life or from the recent past years. You're crossing a line from that place and that identity over into who you're becoming. And when this happens, your ego, which is trying to protect you, starts freaking out. It starts freaking out that it's going to lose control, that it doesn't fully understand and hasn't fully acclimated to this new identity. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. That part of you that's afraid to step away from the familiarity. And so the more we're stepping into the becoming, the more we practice rewriting our identity, the more inner work we do, the more we allow ourselves to drift from our comfort zone and into the great unknown, the louder resistance is going to get, right? And there's this friction point, this holy, sacred tension that happens just before you experience big change and transformation. That's the space between the old and the new. And it also gets really loud because your nervous system, your body registers change as unfamiliar, and unfamiliar is often seen in our body as unsafe. It doesn't always feel safe. And that doesn't have to be the case. There's actually work we can do to help you rewire your belief system, your conditioning, and what's happening in your nervous system so that the newness, change, unfamiliarity can feel safer and safer and safer. But until you've done that work, it's going to feel real big and it's going to feel really, really, really difficult. There's something known as neuroplasticity. This is one of my favorite concepts ever. It's rooted in science. There's nothing woo-woo about neuroplasticity, but neuroplasticity speaks to the way that we can rewire beliefs. It speaks to the fact that science now shows that we can change our brains. For a really, really, really long time, scientists and people who studied the mind thought that you could not change the brain. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And so neuroplasticity proves that every time you override resistance, you move through it. And the next thing we're going to talk about is like, how do you actually do that? And you take aligned action, you're building new neural pathways. So there's literally new ways of thinking, of being, of taking action, of leading, of moving through every area of your life. And the more you do that, the more that literally becomes your new normal. This is one of the most powerful and potent, effective ways to really shift your identity and who you know yourself to be. So how can we work with resistance? There's so many different ways to do this. And again, because this has been such a prominent conversation that I've had with my clients over the decade plus that I've been doing this work, this is one of my absolute favorite things to support my people with. And there are different techniques, different modalities, different practices that I can facilitate with my clients so that I can personally support them in very quickly and powerfully creating shifts in the way that they experience and relate to fear and resistance. And so if that's something you're interested in, please, please, please reach out to me. There are no shortage. I mean, I have dozens of tools in my modality, healing, reprogramming, rewiring toolkit. We're talking from a neurolinguistic programming lens, from a mindset mastery lens, from an energetic lens, from an intuitive and spiritual lens, from a faith-based lens. And so there are ways that I can absolutely support you, but I want to give you some tools that you can use on your own, that you actually don't need anyone else to help you create this change, to help you move through resistance. So the first one is name it. Name it. Awareness is so powerful. And the more self-aware we become, the more powerful we become. And so when resistance pops up, literally just speaking aloud or using like your own internal voice, maybe if like you're in a room of a lot of people, you might not shout this out or say this out loud, but using your own inner voice, however you want to do this, just saying, oh, this is resistance. What I'm experiencing right now is fear, and it's not actually the truth, right? So when fear and resistance comes up, we're not going to swat it away. We're not going to try to immediately affirm or positively think our way out of it. We're going to let it be there. We're going to get really curious. You can always ask yourself or ask the resistance, I wonder what this resistance is wanting me to know. I wonder what this resistance needs. I wonder what the gift is in this experience of fear. And you can dance with that a little bit, right? One of my clients once shared the acronym with me for ego, EGO. This is not rooted in science, but I loved this and it feels very true, very resonant for me personally. But ego can stand for edging God out. What does that mean? When our ego gets really loud, aka the voice of fear and resistance seems overpowering and undeniable, it's the part of us that is actually taking us away from, separating us from what is divinely true. And so a practice that I love, I do this with myself, I do this with my clients, I also teach this to my kids. I've got an almost 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old I don't think would get this right away. We can try it out. But my almost 12-year-old and my 9-year-old, this is something that we do together. When the inner critic creeps up, the inner mean girl, the ego, the voice of fear and resistance creeps up, noticing it, right? Letting it be there, naming it, maybe tapping into it. Where does it live in your body? What is it wanting you to know? What is it trying to communicate to you? And then I ask the question, what is actually true about this? What actually divinely true about this? Whatever you name your higher power, you can bring that in. So I use the word God. That feels true and right and aligned for me. So I might also say, like, what would God want me to know about this? You might say, what would life want me to know about this? What would the universe want me to know about this? Yeah, you're going to get some straight up magic. So number one is name it. And then you can weave in those tools that I just shared. Number two is, we're going to call this one micro moves. I love a good alliteration, micro moves. So this is big because action shrinks fear. The little steps you can take, the little decisions that you make are going to help you start to build momentum. It's really important that you don't sit around, like when you're experiencing fear and resistance, the worst thing you could do is sit around and wait for clarity. wait for motivation. That's not how clarity and motivation work. You get the clarity, you feel the motivation from the doing, from the starting. So just get started. It doesn't even necessarily make a difference what specific step you take first. It's really the energy and the intention behind the action. And once you're in motion, the clarity and the motivation will find you. Okay. One of my mentors once also said that experience breeds confidence. And when I say that, doesn't it make sense? It's like, oh yeah, of course. But so many of us, I'm guilty of this. I've done this before. This inner dialogue of like, well, I don't want to do the thing because I don't feel confident yet. The only way you're going to get confident, the only way that that voice of fear and resistance is going to start to become lower and lower and lower and less powerful is by doing the thing, right? So there's that. Number 3 is create some structure for yourself. Our brains crave predictability. So if we don't have some aspect of structure, resistance is going to thrive for a handful of reasons. But one of the reasons is without structure, we can often find ourselves dancing with something known as decision fatigue. I heard that word or that concept for the first time a few years ago. And honestly, I was in a really kind of low season. And when that word landed, I don't know if it was in a one-on-one conversation. It might have actually been like a book I was reading. I was not familiar with that concept. And the minute I heard the words decision fatigue, I started crying because I was like, oh my gosh, this is contributing to my really low energy and this really dense human experience because I feel like I'm making so many decisions throughout the day for myself, for my business, for my humans, for my people, all the things, that it was exhausting. It was exhausting. So decision fatigue is, what should I do? When should I start? Is this right? Does this matter? Do I do this or do I do that? Do I go there? Do I go here? Right? So structure is a way to help create the experience of safety. The word safety has come up a few times today. Why? Because fear and resistance creep up when there is the illusion of threat, when there's the illusion of danger, when there's something inside of us saying, hey, hello, wee-oo, 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 right? All alarms going off. This is unsafe, even when that couldn't be further from the truth. So structure is going to help create the feeling of safety in your mind and your body and your energy field. And safety creates space for expansion, for clarity, for motivation, for inspiration, for more of what you want. So finding ways to create structure, and it can be really minimal, or if you're somebody who thrives in like hyperstructure, then you can lean on that too. But it literally might be as simple as time blocking, making sure that there's time in the day for you to focus on your priorities, for you to focus on you, for you to focus on whom and what is most important to you. It might look like just brain dumping at the start of each day. It might look like creating a new calendaring system. It might look like using certain rituals, like saying a mantra as you walk into your office or as you walk out of your front door. There can be really powerful little sacred triggers like lighting a candle or setting a timer, letting your physical body and your energetic body know, okay, now it's time to focus on this. Now we're going to do this. That's really powerful. I love to say to my clients, and I use this mantra with myself, be where your feet are planted. I hate to call myself busy, but I do. I was going to say, as a busy mom of 3 running a company full time, I can have a hard time with this. I'll be working on something in my business and I'll be feeling bad or guilty that I'm not with my kids, or I'll be with my kids and then I'll notice, like I'll physically be in their presence, but mentally I'll notice that I'm thinking about this thing that I have to do next week in my business, or like running through my mental to-do list of tasks that I need to delegate, which is totally normal. Don't make yourself bad or wrong. I have a feeling that when I say that out loud, most of my people can relate to that. But one thing that I like to remind myself of is, Dani, be where your feet are planted. When you're working on your biz, work on your biz. Be there mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. When you're with your kids, when you're with your biz, be with your biz. When you're with your kids and your fam, be with them. Be with them physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. I think you're picking up what I'm putting down, right? But that's part of this structure and the intentionality. And the last thing that I want to share with you, again, I'm just sharing like 4 quick tips here, but there's so many really powerful ways that I can personally support you with this, and really incredible work we can do together through a one-on-one or a series of one-on-one sessions. This is literally what I teach. This is the work that I do day in and day out with my clients inside of Energy Expansion Academy. And I would love nothing more than to get to do this work with you. So the last one, tools that you can just do on your own, is anchor into your vision. Let yourself really get clear on who it is that you are becoming. How does she think? How does she walk? How does she talk? What are her beliefs? Where is she going? How does she live? How does she work? How does she lead? How does she love? Right? Let yourself get really, really, really like intimately clear with who that version of you is and what that version of you is creating. And ask yourself, especially when fear and resistance come up, what would she do right now? How would she handle this? How would she navigate this? So as we're closing out this component of like, how do you actually move through? What are the practical tips and tools to move through fear and resistance? I want you to choose one thing that you've been resisting. Where have you been feeling resistance? And I want to encourage you to take one courageous step today, just one. If you're some of my people, there are days when I want to do the biggest, boldest thing. And then there are other days when I want to do like the seemingly tiniest things. So there's no right or wrong way to do this, but I want you to choose one of those things and let me know what that is for you. So in closing, I would love for you to reflect on a few things. Number 1, where is resistance showing up for you right now? In this season of life, this season of businesshood. I meant to say in this season of life, this season of business, this season of motherhood. There it is. We could roll with businesshood. Why don't we just create that? And we're going to make that a thing now. Maybe where you are in your health journey, your spiritual journey, whatever it is, the relationships that matter most to you. Where is resistance showing up for you most right now? Number 2, what are you making that mean? Getting really clear on the stories that we're telling ourselves, the narratives, is really powerful. Maybe it's literally just a simple shift in narrative that's going to make all the difference. And what might be on the other side of this resistance? When you take what you've learned today and you really take this to heart and you implement some of the practical tools and strategies, what's on the other side of resistance? Let me know. And lastly, for what feels like the millionth time, resistance and fear are not bad. They're not bad in many ways. They carry a gift with them. They carry information, lessons, wisdom, breakthrough. Resistance is proof that you're alive, that you're awake, and that you're doing the brave thing. Resistance is often an indicator that you are exactly where you need to be, and you're doing this whole thing called life and business exactly right. So I love you tons. If this episode resonated for you, I would love for you to let me know. Screenshot however you're listening, wherever you're listening, post it on one of your social medias, tag me, share one of your biggest takeaways. Definitely share this with a friend, with a business bestie, with a loved one. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. As always, I want to remind you, you've got this and I've got you. I love you.